All right, this is chapter 4.2. Well, we're going to be talking about slope. So I started with an example from the last section because I want to talk about slope. I like to work ahead even though they haven't started talking about it because I don't like this mysterious thing where we just all of a sudden arrive at this new thing. So if you look at this equation, it is set in the form y equals something x plus 1. And we will have a whole section about this. But this is what's called slope intercept form. For some reason, I always want to say it that way. Slope intercept form. Okay? And so I want you to look at the graph that we ended up with down here. And notice that this plus 1 is the intercept where it intercepts y. So we call this the y-intercept. You don't need to know that yet, but just so you know, that's what it is. So once you're in the form y equals mx plus b, where m is slope and b is the intercept, the y-intercept, then you can easily graph it, okay? And they hide that from you because they want you to see how this table of values, and I want you to see how this table of values works. Okay, so that being said, what I want to show you and what I want you to notice is what this slope is here. So the slope, hopefully you noticed through the many questions you had to do, this slope, this -2, is the rate of change. So it is how much does the graph change? Well, it's going to start here at this plus 1 y-intercept. And if you look at the next point that it intersects perfectly on the graph, it goes down 2, right? It changed down 2 and right 1. So we would call that rise over run or 2 over 1. And it went down, so it's -2 over 1. So what's -2 over 1 simplify to? It simplifies to -2. So again, it went down 2, right here, it went down 2 and right 1. And here is a new point on our line. Another way to say it, you're like, well, why don't you use the point they used? I will. 1, 2, 3. Oh, actually, I went to the wrong one, didn't I? Okay, so forget that. It was down 2, right 1. And now let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. Down 4. Count these for me. I messed up on the first one. My apologies. This was not correct. It should have been to this point. And this was to the right, and then we're going to go right 2. So another way of writing this, the next shift was -3 over 2. -4 over 2. Oh, negative, which is also -2, right? If you divide that. I promise I know what I'm doing. Anyway, so all this is the rate of change. The rate of change is down 2, right 1. So let's look at the actual chapter. Okay, so slope m, as I said, y equals mx plus b is what we're working toward. It's the y, or the slope, I about said it again, slope intercept form. Y equals mx plus b, that's why it was so important that we solve for y in the last chapter, that you learn how to take something and solve for y. So anyway, m is the slope, okay? And now they're going to show us several ways to do this. There's rise over run, okay? So as you can see, they're looking at this red line here is it however many it went up over how many it went this way, right? So, and it is the rise over the run. So it'd be how much it changed in the y over how much it changed in the x. Change in y over change in x. This is the one I want you to really use, though, because it's you don't always get a graph. and I am all about don't learn multiple things. It is important to remember rise over run, simply to remember which one goes on top, y or x. So rise, it would be like to go up. Run would be to go across, right? If you think of the words. That's so I would really just focus on this one and then just try to remember rise over run. I don't recommend using it. Practicing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 is a better way to do it, and it's really easy. It's just basically pick a y. So it didn't have to be this y. They chose this y, so if they choose this y, then they have to use this y1, but then they would just have to make sure that if they use this y first, that they use this x first. They could flip it. They could have used this value of y minus this value of y, but then it would have to be this value of x minus this value of x. So it doesn't matter which way you go as long as you're consistent with the order. So this y, if I want to make this y2, this would have to be x2. And then you subtract, and because of positive and negative, it works out the same. Okay, so let's do some. Okay, so the first thing I do is describe the slope of the line, then find each slope. Okay, we're going to talk more about that in a second, but I want to find the slope, so I'm immediately going to say m is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And what it wants us to talk about, and we're going to talk more about it, is if you notice from left to right, this is going uphill. Okay, so that is a positive slope. If you notice that go from left to right, this line is going downhill, right? Imagine skiing. This would be uphill, this would be downhill. This is a negative slope. Okay, so you should make sure that you expect a positive number. Okay, so let's do it. y2 minus y1. So I will pick this to be my 2's. So this will be y2, this will be x2. And so I'm just going to go 4 minus, and the other point appears to be -1 right here. That's my y2. And then notice I have to put minus the negative, so we're going to have to fix the weirdness. So now we have 3 minus -3. So that equals 4 plus 1 would be 5. 3 plus 3, which would be 6. So my slope is 5 over 6. And that's easily checked by looking at my rise over run, which is basically so I wouldn't have seen this in a normal problem. I just would have said, okay, in order to get from this point to this point, I went up 5 and right 6. Okay, so up 5 is positive, right 6 is negative. Similarly, I went right 6, down 3. So this would actually, using rise over run, this would be 2 over -3, which is the same thing as -2/3. And you're like, oh, this is so much easier. But just trust me, you're going to get to problems where you do not, in fact, normally you do not get a graph. Okay, so let's do this one to the right. Y equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, where y2 is, I almost get confused with their lines. Y2, we'll use the top one first. Actually, we'll use the bottom first. So -2 minus, just to show you we can, 1 over, so I chose these to be my 2's. So -2 minus the 1, and the 1 is not this one, it's this one. And then 1 minus a -1. So 1 minus -1, which is the same thing as -3 over 2, because minus a minus is plus, so 1 plus 1. So we end up with -3 over 2. Did I do this? Oh yeah, see, that's another reason. I messed this up because I did run over rise instead of rise over run. So it should have been -3 over 2. Yet another reason. I never do rise over run either. So I guess I'm out of practice. But yeah. Much easier to make a mistake doing rise over run. This formula here works every time, all the time. It also gives you a formula that you can substitute in for later. So again, this is the formula I want you guys using. Okay, so let's talk about positive, negative slopes. We're not going to have time for this. If you want to try these, you can. The answers are in your ebook. It'd be good practice. This is taking longer than I thought. Okay, so what happens if I do my y equals m2 minus, or y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and I get this value, 0 divided by 7. So that means the slope is 0, and you have a horizontal line. So the way that and then if you, same exact thing, you do this thing, and you end up with 4 divided by 0. Okay, you can't divide by 0, so this one is called undefined. Okay, I'm going to show you how to remember that too. 2 ways. Here's how I like to remember it. This is actually Mrs. France's little thing. But 0 on top is okay. 0 on bottom, no. So you notice that the 0's on top here. So this is the one that is, that's okay. Because it's 0 divided by something. You're not dividing by 0. Okay, so hopefully that helps you to remember. And then we've got all kinds of ways to remember these things, okay? So again, this is the little part I just talked about. If you solve y2 minus y1 and 0's on top, it's okay. You just have a 0 slope. If you end up with a 0 on bottom here, right, those are your 0's, then it is undefined. So this one would be your horizontal, and this would be your vertical. Okay, here's some other fancy ways. Here's my favorite one. I like the slope dude. Mrs. France has Mr. Slope Guy. If you want to draw a picture of Mr. Slope Guy, basically what it's saying is he's got this going up as his positive eye, this going down as his negative eye. You basically have to be looking at this thing. Whereas I like the slope dude because it's like uphill is positive, downhill skiing is fun, downhill is your negative, and then this is 0 fun, he says, because this is just flat. He has to push on his skis because he doesn't have enough, he's not getting some negative. Hopefully he rode the chairlift or gondola over here, and then he rides down, and this is 0 fun. And then the way I remember it is if he got to the cliff, he would be undefined because he would just go, and therefore he would be undefined. So horizontal, 0, undefined, or you can draw this, put it on your notebook. Just remember the 0. Just remember the okay horizontal, no vertical. Okay, hopefully that helps. See you guys next time.